Titanic wasn't just a movie, it was an obsession. But beneath the romance and the wreckage was a gamble too big to fail. The star who almost wasn't cast, a budget that spiraled into Hollywood's biggest nightmare, and secrets from the real ship buried for decades. These are 20 weird facts about Titanic, and hidden inside the waves and the wreckage, Cameron's true goal wasn't the movie, it was the wreck itself. The ship may have gone down, but the story never let go. Number 1. James Cameron didn't pitch Titanic as a love story. He pitched it as an excuse to go underwater. Fascinated since childhood by shipwrecks, Cameron became obsessed after seeing the 1992 IMAX documentary Titanica. He convinced Fox to bankroll the film by promising box office spectacle, but privately he just wanted to dive to the real wreck, and he did. Not once, but 12 times, descending 2.5 miles into the North Atlantic in cramped submersibles. The eerie shots of the Titanic's bow, rusting chandeliers and collapsing cabins weren't Hollywood sets. They were Cameron's own footage, filmed in near total darkness at the bottom of the ocean. What began as a director's personal obsession with exploration became the foundation of the most expensive movie ever made, a love story built on the bones of the real Titanic. Number 2. James Cameron didn't walk into the studio with a script. He walked in with one line scribbled on a page: Romeo and Juliet on the Titanic. That was it, a doomed love story set against history's most famous disaster. Fox executives didn't need more. They greenlit the most expensive movie ever made on that single sentence. What made it irresistible was the simplicity. Everyone knew the ship would sink. The only question was who would the audience cling to when it did. Cameron built the entire film on that tension, crafting Jack and Rose as star-crossed lovers whose story would pull viewers through the chaos. The irony? A billion-dollar gamble launched on a pitch so short it could fit in the margins of a napkin went on to become one of the most successful films of all time. Number 3. Before Jack and Rose became eternal, Hollywood nearly gave us an entirely different shipboard romance. The casting room was a storm. Tom Cruise, Matthew McConaughey, and Jared Leto were all floated for Jack. For Rose, names like Reese Witherspoon, Claire Danes, and even Gwyneth Paltrow were considered. At one point, a young Lindsay Lohan was suggested as Little Rose. Then Leonardo DiCaprio walked in and nearly lost the role. By 1996, he was already a teen idol after Romeo plus Juliet, and he strolled into Cameron's office assuming the part was his. Cameron pulled out a camera and asked him to read with Kate Winslet. DiCaprio balked. "I don't read," he said, thinking his charm was enough. Cameron pushed back. No audition, no Jack. So Leo grudgingly read. The moment he and Winslet locked eyes, the air shifted. Their chemistry was undeniable, nervous, tender, alive. Winslet herself had been relentless in chasing the role, calling Cameron Kate the Shameless for how she cornered him, insisting she was Rose. Out of the chaos, the doubts, and the near misses, one of cinema's greatest couples was born. Jack and Rose weren't just cast, they were fought for. Number 4. Leonardo DiCaprio wasn't just Jack Dawson on screen. He was chaos bottled into a 22-year-old star. On set, James Cameron called him like a cat. One moment he was sullen, complaining endlessly about the cold water, refusing to climb in unless the cameras were rolling. The next, he'd be underwater for hours, somersaulting like he'd been born in the Atlantic. When he wasn't testing Cameron's patience, he was pulling pranks. His favorite? Farting into his jacket, then dramatically sweeping it across Kate Winslet's face. She howled with laughter instead of storming off. He sketched dirty cartoons between takes, slipped silly notes into props, and kept the mood light even during grueling 16-hour shoots. But beneath the mischief, there was trust. Winslet later revealed they'd spend hours in his trailer whispering about relationships, love, and sex. He gave her advice she said actually worked, and she became his safe confidant. Their bond wasn't romantic, but it was rare. two young actors thrown into the biggest movie in the world, leaning on each other to survive Cameron's punishing set. DiCaprio was part diva, part clown, part confidant, but together he and Kate forged the unshakable bond that made Jack and Rose feel heartbreakingly real. Number 5. The chaos of Titanic wasn't limited to icy water and sinking sets. One night in Nova Scotia, the cast and crew sat down to a big pot of clam chowder. Within an hour, people started collapsing. Over 50 were rushed to the hospital, including James Cameron himself. Some laughed uncontrollably, others couldn't stop shaking, and Cameron remembers jabbing crew members with syringes just to calm them. Doctors soon discovered the chowder had been spiked with PCP, an industrial hallucinogen. No one ever identified the culprit, and the case remains unsolved to this day. For a production already teetering on exhaustion, the poisoning became another surreal chapter. The film that aimed to recreate one of history's greatest disasters nearly became a real-life medical emergency, all because someone turned dinner into sabotage. Number 6. James Cameron didn't want actors pretending to be cold. He wanted them frozen to the bone. He ordered the water in the massive tanks chilled until breath fogged in the air. Kate Winslet spent so many hours submerged she developed hypothermia, her lips turning blue between takes. Crew members fell sick from the cold. Stunt performers bruised and battered as hydraulic sets pitched them into churning waves. Even extras collapsed under the strain of filming drowning scenes in near-freezing water. And Cameron? He was relentless. He demanded 90-hour weeks, no excuses. He prowled the set with a bullhorn, snapping at delays, correcting details down to how an extra's hat should tilt. The crew secretly nicknamed him MIJ, short for maniacal genius. Winslet later admitted she wouldn't work with him again unless she was paid a lot of money. Yet even as he pushed people to breaking, the results were undeniable. The icy breath, the exhaustion in their faces, the way bodies trembled in the lifeboats. None of it was acting, it was survival, and that raw realism burned into every frame, making Titanic feel less like a movie and more like reliving the disaster itself. You were drowning inside. Number 7. For a movie remembered as a digital marvel, Titanic was shockingly physical. James Cameron didn't want pixels, he wanted steel, wood, and water. In Mexico, he ordered a near full-scale replica of the Titanic built on massive hydraulics towering over the coastline like the ghost of the original ship. The set could tilt, flood, and break apart on command, swallowing stunt performers in waves that smashed against iron railings. Entire sections of the ship, from the grand staircase to the boiler rooms, were constructed only to be destroyed. Most of the so-called CGI shots weren't digital at all. They were miniatures, matte paintings, and camera tricks honed by decades of practical effects. Only about 2 hours of the 3-hour epic used computer graphics. Everything else was flesh and gravity. When the ship finally cracked in half on screen, it wasn't a programmer's animation, it was a monster of hydraulics creaking under its own weight. Extras tumbled down slanted decks, water roared through corridors, and the chaos felt terrifyingly real because it was real. Cameron's obsession with tangibility made Titanic less like a special effect and more like reliving the disaster itself. Number 8. James Cameron wasn't satisfied with extras just filling the background. He wanted the Titanic to breathe with authenticity. So, before the cameras rolled, hundreds of actors were enrolled in what felt like time travel boot camp. Etiquette coaches drilled the first-class passengers in Edwardian manners, how to sit with perfect posture, how to glide across a hallway floor, how to hold a teacup without betraying modern habits. They practiced formal dining rituals and subtle gestures of polite society. Meanwhile, the steerage extras were trained the opposite way. They were taught rowdy dances, looser movements, and the earthy camaraderie of immigrants celebrating below deck. Cameron insisted that even if the camera barely caught them, their energy would radiate through the frame. He believed those invisible details mattered. A glance at a table setting, the way a couple clutched hands, or a child's awkward bow. It all built the illusion that this wasn't just a set, but a living ship with real souls aboard. The Titanic wasn't only sinking on screen, it was society itself recreated and then torn apart. Number 9. One of Titanic's most haunting images doesn't involve Jack or Rose at all. As water rushes beneath the cabin doors, an elderly husband and wife hold each other in bed, waiting for the inevitable. It lasts only seconds on screen, but that moment was pulled from history. They were Isidore and Ida Strauss, owners of Macy's department store in New York. When the Titanic struck the iceberg, Ida was offered a seat in a lifeboat. Her husband was not. She refused to leave him. Witnesses remembered her words, "We've been together for 40 years, and where you go, I go." The two remained together as chaos swirled.